Hello and welcome to my little allotment. My name is Kirsty and you are joining me on my allotment plot in Lincoln, in Lincolnshire in the UK. Now, you're joining me in my polytunnel and it is a very hot day, so this is a little bit silly, but I've got lots of jobs to get on with. So I'm going to be showing you all the jobs that I'm going to be getting on with this week. It is May the 12th, so these are all the jobs that I'm going to be doing over this week. Things like planting out dahlias, planting out things into their final positions like sweet peppers, chilies, loofahs, cucumbers, sowing lots of seeds and doing lots of little gardening tasks. So I'm going to show you what I'm up to. It's so hot in the polytunnel right now. I have beads of sweat forming on my face. I really hope you can't see them in this video. One of the big jobs this week for me was to sow lots of seeds. So I have sown lots of seeds into my beds in the polytunnel, but you can also sow directly now outside into the ground. There's lots of things that you can sow directly. So I have gone for some small Chantenay red carrots. I've got some rocket mustard leaves and spinach leaves. I've got some spring onions, some lettuce, some radish, and some like small silky turnips. They're like smaller variety, they're really nice. And what else did I put in? Spring onions, radish, beetroot. So I've got a nice variety of lots of different salad things in here, but all of those seeds, if you don't have a greenhouse or a polytunnel, can actually be sown directly into the ground or beds outside now, so you are not too late. And then in another couple of weeks at the end of May, I'll be sowing my next batch. Another job that I'm going to be doing today is planting my aubergines in their final positions. Now, I'm kind of doing a little bit of an experiment because aubergines do like good airflow, but they also do like the warmth. Now, I'm not sure there's quite enough airflow in the polytunnel, but I'm going to give them a go anyway. If not, they're probably going to get spider mite, but I'm going to put them in anyway. I'm going to use this pallet collar bed, and I'm going to be planting 4 different varieties in here, and then I'm going to interplant some things like lettuce and radish in between. So I've got 4 different aubergines. I've got aubergine white knight, aubergine black beauty, aubergine green knight, and aubergine farmer's long. So I'm going to plant those all into these beds, and as you can see, they're nice plug plants. They're doing quite well. A lot of my plants are leggy because I started my seeds off quite early this year just to try and get ahead of the game, but obviously it's been very warm, so things have just grown really quickly, yet the risk of frost didn't actually pass until last week here in Lincoln. So everything's now being planted out really late. So yeah, things have got a little bit leggy. But these have formed a few sets of leaves. Let's have a quick look at their root system. Let's have a quick look. I mean, I don't think you can see it very well, but they have got a good root system. They're very dry because I haven't watered them for maybe a day or 2. But I knew that I'd be bringing them out in the car here. So I've been a little bit lax, but these are just grown in some cocoa coir compost with an added slow release fertilizer, and they're doing fantastic. So they're going to be planted here into this bed. So I'm going to do that now. Next on my allotment to-do list is compost. Now we have this area at the back of the polytunnel with these Daleks. We have tried using pallet collars before, where you put the compost in and you turn it over. However, we have such a problem with bindweed that it tends to then go into the new compost, which isn't ideal because you don't want to be popping that new compost into your bed. So we're using these Daleks. We have got a plastic sheeting on the floor where we put these over, so it just makes it a little bit easier for us. Now it has been very hot, so if you have compost, whether it's in these Dalek bins or in pallet collars, make sure you're giving it a water. It does need some moisture to make compost, so make sure that you're giving it a little water. Now I try to bring down once a week all my scraps from home. I have a tub, and in there I put things. We like to rip up kitchen roll tubes, toilet roll tubes, crush up eggshells, tea bags, coffee grounds, because I absolutely love my coffee, any kind of spent compost, any plants that didn't quite make it, because I do have lots of seedlings that didn't quite make it. And I put them all into a tub. I've actually bought them in a cardboard box, and they are just going to go into the Dalek now. I've already put in my fresh fruit and vegetable bits, And this is a mixture of like brown ripped up cardboard and some spent compost, so that will give it good layers. And then in the next layer I'll put some more green waste, which will probably be the grass clippings from home, and then on top of that we'll put a bit more cardboard just to make sure we're giving it a good mixture. If you can get in there and give it a little turn, do that, and also add a little bit water if it has been completely dry, because you do need moisture. So we're going to add that in now. And realistically, I can use this cardboard box to add into the compost, but I do need it to take some plants home first, but I'll bring it back and add it to the compost bin later. Next on my list of things to do at the allotment this week, I am going to be planting out my dahlia tubers. Now, I am not saying it's too late to plant out dahlia tubers. It certainly isn't. However, this is late for me, not getting them in the ground, but actually doing anything with the tuber. So normally when the dahlia tuber arrives, I will soak it for around 20 minutes. And I normally get the tubers around March. And then what will happen is in March, I'll soak the tubers, I'll rehydrate them, and then I'll plant them in like sort of shallow compost like this, in some pots, in the greenhouse or the polytunnel. And this will allow the dahlia tubers to grow on. And also it helps reduce the risk of them getting eaten by slugs and snails, because they are very, very tasty. However, with everything going on, because there's a lot been going on, as I've said, I didn't do all the normal things that I'd normally do. So the dahlia tubers got delivered, but I've done nothing with them until last week, when I soaked them all and planted a lot of them up into these tubs. Now they are starting to shoot, but they have very small shoots. Normally, if I've planted them in March in somewhere warm like a polytunnel or a greenhouse, the plants will be sort of up to here. But it doesn't matter, it's not too late, they will still flower. The great thing about dahlias is they will flower all the way up to the first frost. So sometimes you can get dahlias flowering in October or November. But what I want to do is, I've decided I can't be bothered to wait for them to grow in here. And actually, I'm going to risk it all this year, and I'm going to plant them directly into the soil. And I am going to pray that the slugs and snails stay away. This might be a stupid idea, but I'm full of stupid ideas, so we're going to go along with it. So what I'm going to do is, obviously I've got a lot of compost here that I want to bury with it, because the compost has a lot of nutrients in it compared to this soil, which is dry, and it has not had anything done to it for such a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig a hole. Probably could have used the spade, it would have taken like 1 second. And we use this tiny little trowel, but I actually love this, it's so cute, it's like a little love heart. Anyway, I'm going to dig a hole, and I would normally put some water in it, but I forgot to go and get my watering can, and I can't be bothered to pause it. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to plant this directly. I did water these really well last night, so I'm just going to tip it upside down and it should fall out. Now it has actually started to root, which is great. So I'm just going to pop that in like so. I'm not very gentle with anything, and I'm just going to pop the soil that we've dug up around. However, there is a tiny little sprout. I'm going to make sure that that is left sticking up. We're obviously going to put a label in, because Kirsty will never remember all the names of all of the dahlias that she's brought. Now, I haven't moved any of my dahlias over from my old allotment. The reason being is I wasn't very well last year, so I was unable to mulch them in, which I normally do. So I lost them all, which is sad, but we start again. I've ordered loads and loads of tubers from Farmer Gracie. They have an amazing selection. And at this time of the year, they have loads of money off as well, so I ordered loads. Probably going to get slightly later flowering, but it doesn't matter, because I do have some dahlias already in my border at home. So I'll get those first, and I'll show you how they're getting on. They were mulched into the ground, so they survived the winter. There's only one that hasn't, and they are all growing. And so far, they've not been eaten by the slugs, and I think that's because the mulch is crispy and it stops the slugs and snails. Anyway, let me know if you're growing dahlias this year, what varieties, and let me know how you're getting on and how well they are growing. And the last job I'm going to be doing this week on my allotment is to plant out my sweet peppers into this bed. I will also be planting out my cucumbers. However, I'm just leaving them for another week to grow on as they are not quite big enough yet to be planted outside. And I also need to fit some netting across here for them to climb up. But I am going to be planting out my loofahs. They have done very well. They are growing really well and have got lots of little flower buds forming. So they are going to be planted directly in front of these poles on in my greenhouse, and I'm going to just put some string across to here, and then I'm going to allow them to climb up here and onto the netting that I'll be fixing on for the cucumbers. So I'm just going to plant out some sweet peppers and the loofahs in here. Again, I'm going to add some cucumbers. I think I've got a couple of chili plants that I'm going to add in here as well, and a couple of nasturtium plants just to get the beneficial sacrificial plants in here to hopefully deter all the bugs away from everything else in the polytunnel. I hope you've enjoyed my little job update of what I'm up to on the allotment. Please like, subscribe, or leave me a comment and let me know what you're up to on your allotment plots, and I will see you next week.